Hey guys, it's Rogway here, and we are back with another Mario tutorial. And we just finished putting in a death sequence and detecting for Mario's y-axis. You're going to notice that there is a problem. First of all, the problem being that it doesn't go anywhere after he dies. But also, I'll show you another problem that we have. If I go to test this, and I play this, and I get to that pit that we just put in for the death check, look what happens when I keep pressing the keyboard. I can actually bounce back out of that pit. He's never really permanently there. Okay, that is a problem. And I'm going to show you how we can basically stop all control of Mario when we hit that pit. If you remember, back up here, we created event listeners, which I told you were like towers, radar towers. So the easiest way for us to stop all control of Mario when he hits the y-axis at 400 is just to remove the listener for the button down, all right, which is what we created for him to move. So here's what we'll do. After this one here, okay, so after the go to and stop 4, we're going to put this. The exact same command. If I go up to this and I copy this line for the event listener, so stage dot add event listener, blah, 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 key down. The difference here being that add will now change to remove. So when we test that, okay, I'm just going to do it quick. I'm just going to go to that pit really fast, okay? When we get to that pit and we fall into it, I no longer have any control over him. He keeps bouncing, but I don't have any control over him. He doesn't work anymore. He basically just stays falling. Okay? So this removes that event listener and it removes all control that we had of him. We're also going to have it go to a scene that happens before this whole thing starts. So in our window, we're going to go to scene, and let's make a scene. It's going to be called intro, and we're going to make it go above scene 1. Okay, so it's going to play before this game even starts, okay? So intro starts before scene 1. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to scene 1, where we have all of our code, and we're going to actually copy these 3 lines. You could type it if you want, but we're going to copy these 3 lines. That's what I'm going to do anyways. I'm going to go to the intro, and at the intro I'm pasting it, but I'm going to change all of these to remove. Now you might be wondering why we are doing that. Well, imagine for a second you've set up a radar tower that's detecting for this key down. And then you die in the game and you go to restart. And you're building another tower. It doesn't make any sense. What you would do, the proper way so you don't get any errors, is before you start the game again, you remove the previous event listeners and then add them again. Otherwise, you're going to get tons of errors. Okay, so we're going to, the only thing that's going to be in this intro frame is remove our event listeners. Okay, so scene 1, we add them. Intro, we remove them. And now all we have to do is in the death check, sorry, not in the death check, but in the actual Mario sprite, we're going to tell it to go to that intro frame when he dies. And here's how we do that. Super simple. We're going, whoops, come on, man. There we go. We're going to go into Mario sprite by double-clicking. Make sure it's unlocked. We're going to go to the frame where we have the animation That was frame 4. We're going to go into that movie clip. And let me just zoom out a bit. This is where we had that animation of Mario falling and dying. On the very last frame of this, so after this animation has played, we're going to add a bit of code. Alright, and we can do this super simple. Okay, if we wanted to. Basically, we can just tell it to go to that frame that we want of intro, which was obviously where we want it to go. Okay, so what am I trying to tell you here? On the last frame of the death sequence, okay, first of all, we're going to put a stop. You saw that Mario keeps dying. He keeps coming back up. We want it to stop when it reaches the end. We don't want it to keep jumping. Now, if we just put Mario dot go to and play, oops, I got a capital there. Frame 1 of intro, oops, lowercase, sorry guys, lots of mistakes here. It's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because this little animation is happening inside of actually inside of 2 movie clips. Inside of the Death movie clip and also inside of the Mario movie clip, which is also part of Mario. So it's really, really embedded in here. So when that happens and we want to control the main stage, we replace Mario with this command, movie clip root, which basically means go back to the root, go back to the main stage and go to and play frame 1, of intro. That should work. Okay, so last frame of the death sequence, we're telling it to stop, we're telling it to go to and play from the root, from the main scene, frame 1 of the intro scene, which we know, if we go there, is where we remove our event listeners. And we shouldn't even see this. This frame will happen so fast that basically you won't even see the flash. It'll go straight into scene 1 and start again. Okay? Because if you remember, or if you've used Animate in the past, you know that it just plays the scenes in order unless there's a stop on here. So it should just jump right through that. Okay? So let's test it out. Let's go control test and let's see if it does what it's supposed to do. We've got Mario jumping and let's fall into that pit. And what should happen is he should fall in. I should lose control of him. It should jump back to the beginning. Let's see. And it did not. Okay, it did not work. So I must have typed something wrong. And I have to look now to see where I made my mistake. Somewhere on that frame, I must have a mistake. So let's take a quick look. Let's go in. We're on frame 4. We've got our stop. And we're going into the movie clip and we are checking. We got movie clip root, which looks right. Movie clip root dot go to. Ah, look at this. I put got to. That's enough to screw it up. Let's try it again. Let me close that and test it again. Man, little things like that will drive you crazy. And now let's see if he falls in and he dies. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, and you do see that little flash. It's quick, but it happens. So there you go. When he falls into the pit, he dies. And it goes back to the start. Perfect. Okay, so that works great. Now we're going to add some enemies. Okay, we're going to add a few enemies, and the way I'm going to do it is not the right way. I'm going to tell you right now. It's going to detect for all of the enemies. Normally, if I was doing enemies, I would do them individually. But here's how we're going to do this. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to go to, first of all, we're going to create our enemies. So we're going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it enemies. There they are. And so the enemies are going to be a component. Although let's try it on their own layer first. I was going to say be a component of the background. Could do it that way. That way they'll move with the background. Maybe we'll do it that way. Maybe that makes more sense. So let's, you know what? Let's do it that way. Let's lock these, and let's double click the background. And let's make our layer actually inside of the background, just like we did with the coins. Let's call it enemies. And let's go import. Import to stage. We're going to put a Goomba. And again, if you don't play Mario, these guys are the death of you most times. These little stupid Goombas. Hit open. And where did he go? Oh, there he is. Okay, he was hiding behind there. Let's enlarge it a bit. He's looking a little small. Maybe about that size. And let's do our usual trace bitmap. Okay. Let's just zoom in so we can see it. Ooh, it's looking pretty bad, but you know what? It's okay. We'll just get all the white gone. And when we're at 100%, when we're zoomed out, it should be fine. Yeah, it looks like it'll be okay back here. Okay, so we've got one Goomba. And here's how we can make a whole level full of Goombas. We can select one, convert him to a movie clip, call it Goomba. Oops, Goomba. He's a movie clip now. And let's go inside of that movie clip. Or you know what? Sorry, I shouldn't have called that Goomba. I'm going to go to my libraries. I'm going to rename that. I'm going to call it enemies, because that doesn't make sense. I'm going to call that movie clip enemies. Hopefully that updated on this one. I'm going to go inside of that. Inside of here, I'm going to convert that to a symbol. It can be a graphic symbol. I'm going to call this one Goomba. Okay, there he is. And now all we have to do is just go to our library, and we're going to drag out Goombas basically wherever we want them to show up in the level. So I'm going to kind of place them all over the place here. Try to line them up to the ground, otherwise it's weird. So I'm just using my library, dragging them out, putting them basically wherever I want. Okay. Lots of Goombas. Like I said, I probably wouldn't do it this way if I was building the game for real, and I'll explain why in a sec. I would probably have them separate. And most likely I would use something like an array, which we don't get into in grade 11. But there we go. Now we've got kind of enemies spread throughout the level, and I'm just using my scroll wheel to go through there to look at, you know, the map and see where they're placed. And let's get back out. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, I have an idea. It'll look cool. Let's add some movement to them. Okay? So here's how we can do that. We can select, I'm just clicking frame 1. You'll see that they all become selected at once. Okay, they all become selected because it's selecting everything on that layer. Oh, we're going to have a problem with this first one. I'm just going to move them back a little bit. Maybe here. So click that first layer. convert to this symbol again, this time a movie clip, and let's call it enemy moves. Oops, moves. And hit OK. And let's do that same little trick we did with the death sequence. We'll go to like frame 40. We'll insert a keyframe, right click. We'll go to frame 20, insert a keyframe. And here's what I want to do. I'm going to move them. I'm going to go on frame 20. I'm going to stay on frame 20. I'm going to move them over, let's say about there. Okay? So frame 1, they're there. Frame 20, they're there. Frame 40, they move back. And then I'm just going to put some classic tweens in between. And now what they should do is they should move back and forth a little bit. Okay, just like they do in the game. They just go back and forth. Okay? So let's go back out. Let's go back out again. Let's test it. Okay, they are moving, which is great. We can jump over them, or we can jump through them, because right now we don't have any detection for when we bump into them. So let's do that now. We're going to detect for us dying when we hit a Goomba. Should be pretty easy. Okay, should be something now that we have seen already before. And so, first thing first, we want to go into the background and we want to name our instance under under properties. And I'm going to call it Goomba. Let's call it enemy. Okay? And all we have to do is detect if we bump into enemy, we die. Okay, so it should be pretty easy. We're going to go into our actions. We're going to create a function for that. Okay? We'll call it enemy death. So actually, we can, let's just type it. First of all, let's go in our loop. Let's put enemy death. Bracket, bracket, semicolon. Now let's go down here. Function. I'm at the very bottom. Oh, be good if I could spell. Function. Enemy death. Bracket, bracket, parentheses. And here we're going to just put a simple hit detect. It's going to be if background dot, what do we call it? Enemies? I forget already. Or do we call it Goombas? I gotta double check. Let's just go and check our properties. Oh, enemy, I called it. Enemy. Let's go back. If background enemy, because it's part of the background, dot hit test point. We're going to use the registration point to detect for this, because if we try to use object, it's going to detect the whole entire block of enemies, which is going to fail miserably. Okay, so if Mario's registration point contacts any of the enemies, we're going to do the exact same thing as we did up here. Actually, we can even copy these two. We're going to go to the death sequence, which was frame 4 of Mario, and we're going to remove all control of Mario. Okay, so just to reiterate to remind you how this is working, it's checking to see if his hit point touches their hit point. Okay, if it does, it goes to and stops frame 4 of Mario, which is our death sequence, and then it removes control of him, and we should jump back to the start, because within Mario's frame 4 death sequence, up and down, there's a jump back. So let's see. Let's test it up. Oh, what happened here? That's right. I keep making this mistake. It's not background. It's World 1. You know, I should have called it background just for sake of, like, my own sanity. Test. Here we go. Oh. And It's not detecting any hits. Okay, and I know why. I know why. This is going to take a little bit of messing around, but we need to get the hit points lined up for our enemies. So let's go into background. And I don't know if this is going to make any sense at all. But you'll notice that the little registration points of our Goombas are in the middle of our enemy. Okay? This is creating an issue because Mario can just run through them and it doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen to him because the points will never touch. His point's down here, their point's in the middle. Like I said, this is probably not the way I would have done it if I was doing this the right way, which would have been with an array. But what we can do is we can double-click our Goomba. We'll go into World 1, double-click into enemies, double-click again into enemy moves, double-click again right into the graphic symbol of a single Goomba. Okay, so we're going to the core of this. And the way you move a registration point is you move actually the graphic up so that the registration point stays below. But then what we also have to do is when we go back out one, we have to move our guys down as well. Okay? And now everything should be working, I hope. If those points are close enough to each other, then he'll die. But let's see. Oh! It worked! It was super glitchy. Let me just... It works, but it's really glitchy. Okay, it's not... Oh, that time it worked good. I'm just letting him kill me. You'll see, like, he goes through me a couple times, sometimes before I get killed. So, yeah, it's not perfect. We would need an array to make it perfect. But at least now we've got some hit detection on the enemy. And we could refine that. Another way we could have did it, if we didn't want to make an array, is we could have made separate instances for each enemy, like we did with the coins. And then what we would do is we would create hit detect objects for each enemy. Alright? Hopefully that makes sense. Because that way if he touches anywhere on the Goomba, if him and the Goomba touch anywhere on the body of the enemy, we would make it go to the death sequence. Okay, but because I wanted to kind of make it a little easier for you guys and to save some time, that's how I did it. If you want to change yours, you can. Anyways, hopefully you got through that. It was a long one. Sorry about that. But we've got our death sequence in there. We've got a death check. We've got an enemy death now, sort of. We've got our enemies moving. So we've got the start of a game here coming along really nicely. In the next video, we're going to look at a few other things. We're going to look at how to actually calculate scores. So when we pick up these coins, we want it to actually create a score for us. And in the final video, which we're getting close to, we're going to finish up. We're going to put some finishing touches on this. And we're also going to add sounds so that this game really looks like a finished product. So stay tuned. Save your work. Till next time.